All right, well, welcome back to another Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. My name is Andy, and I have a problem with albums.
And my name is Aurelio, and I have the same addiction to albums like Andy.
Perfect. Today's topic of our meeting is going to be the Australian heavy rock band Wolfmother. It was an interesting band.
Yeah, this is one of those bands that was pretty popular when we were younger. And I heard a couple of their songs before, but never really listened to anything that they had outside of that. But definitely an interesting listen through all of these albums.
Yeah, I'd assume probably the same for you, and a lot of people probably got their first taste of Wolfmother from like Guitar Hero 3, I think, with Woman being on.
Yeah, that was my first introduction to this band.
Yeah, coming in, I thought I only knew Mother. That is Danzig. Woman. But I guess I knew Joker and the Thief. I didn't know that coming in.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, this was an interesting band. Definitely something I hadn't really heard of before. But, being from Australia, I didn't really hear much news from them. I was kind of surprised to see they had released 5 albums, with the newest one only being 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to jump right in it with 2005's Wolfmother?
Yeah, self-titled debut album. Yeah, I mean, this album I thought was, pretty good. I thought it was a really strong first album for a band. I personally gave it a B rating. There's a lot of 60s and 70s vibes to this.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
To this band and this album. I kept drawing comparisons to Robert Plant from Led Zeppelin. There were some guitar tones in here and riffs that sounded like they were from Black Sabbath. This was kind of all over the place, but it was a pretty solid album, I thought. Some of my favorite songs on here, obviously Woman. That was a very standout track on here. Joker and the Thief is another good one. But personally, my favorite song was Tales.
Really?
On this album. Yeah, I just really liked that guitar melody that it had.
That's fair.
It started off slow a little bit, but then once the electric guitar kicked in, it played that melody throughout the rest. I had it stuck actually in my head all day today when I was at work, so before I came here. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I touched on a lot of the same things you did. You could hear a lot of the rock influences. You're right. Like, a lot of his like high-pitched wailing for really what it is a lot. Did remind me a lot of Plant, especially on the back half of like Stairway to Heaven,
Yep.
You could tell like those were the vocals he took from was when he was in the higher notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gave this album an S, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I had a lot of songs off here that I really liked. Starting right off the top, Dimensions. I love the chorus and just the big exploding hook you got off of that.
It's funny because I actually wrote on here that I wasn't a big fan of the chorus.
Really?
Yeah. I thought it was a good entry song, and it kind of prepared you for like what the rest of the album was going to be like, But
again, yeah, Woman. It's just a solid no frills hard rock song I really enjoyed. And I think maybe my favorite off this album, Where Eagles Have Been. I thought it was a good, slower, reminded me of a lot of older classic rock songs that you would find.
Yeah.
In towards the middle of the album before it starts getting heavy again.
Yep.
Just a good
Yeah, that was what I wrote for that song, is that I really liked that slow melody that it had,
Just to me, and this is what I think a lot of songs later don't have, is I think later he abandons just his ability to sing and he hits just the high wails more often.
Yes.
And I think if he had more songs like Where Eagles Have Been, I think the band could have got, bigger or better.
Yeah.
Apple Tree I had down, not really the highlight, but just really you could see the punk rock influences out of this song to me.
Yep.
Just, the 3 chords repetitively. Joker and the Thief, I thought the intro riff was just amazing.
Oh, yeah.
And when it comes in with the drums too, the hi-hat.
Mm-hmm.
It just was just a highlight to me. Mind's Eye, also a highlight.
Yep, I really liked Mind's Eye.
Yeah. Like I said, I wouldn't put it as a highlight, but Love Train 2 was also a pretty good one.
Mm-hmm.
Just I just had so many songs that I ended up adding to my playlist from this one
Yeah, yeah.
that I just really enjoyed. The bottom half to me, at times, was kind of the weaker part of the albums.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you find that in a lot of albums, right? You don't find strong closers on bottom albums for the most part.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, there's always exceptions. I mean, I loved the raw energy a lot of these songs had. Like Woman, I mean, you could just tell.
Just
like,
out of nowhere.
yeah, three guys just jamming out to, like, trying to recreate the influences they had found. The only thing I didn't really like about this album is the mixing on a lot of songs,
Okay.
which just wasn't great. It's like they recorded everything, and then they just upped the volume on all the tracks. And so a lot of times it was just muddy almost.
Yeah.
In parts. And parts made it hard to listen when they had everything going at like a high octane volume.
Yeah, everything just kind of blended together. Couldn't really differentiate.
It drowned out a lot of what you could probably add intricacies.
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean, that's really all I had. A lot of distortion. I think just across this band's albums.
Yeah, definitely in some of the later albums.
Yeah. At times, it fit perfectly, I think. At times, I think it maybe would have been better with a different effect or just no effect at all.
Mm-hmm.
No, I really like this album, as you can tell with my S rating.
Yeah.
I mean, I listened to most of the albums the second time, but I think it took me a little bit to get to the next album because I was just jamming out to this album.
One. Yeah.
I really enjoyed this album.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I mean, obviously, it's still a big album to this day, and it got a lot of recognition. And it launched this band because, there's two versions of this album, right?
Yeah.
There's the Australian version, which is the first one to come out, and the international version, which comes out later.
Yep.
Like, this blew up in Australia and then was pretty big in the rest of the world.
And I'm pretty sure this is their biggest release.
For sure, yeah.
Out of their career, so.
I would be, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And this is the original. It's the only album this lineup plays on. To me, this band reminded me a lot of our last band on the last episode, Annihilator, where it's just the one dude, and then he cycles out guys.
Yeah, yeah. The main man behind this band, his name is Andrew Stockdale, singer and guitarist in this band. But yeah, he's kind of the main only member that stays throughout.
Right, and he's the only one that stays, and their most commercial success was with the first one. And I know they kind of formed the band I was seeing as I think it's three guys. They were just jamming around. Probably, just jam to their influences, and then you write your own songs here.
Yeah, just having fun.
Yeah, because it looked like they were a bunch of graphic designers or something. I think Stockdale was a photographer before that. So just three probably work friends that jammed out together. Like, hey, we're big Zeppelin and Foghat and those kind of bands. And then just that passion they had for that type of music, you could see
in this album. Yeah.
And then I think you kind of lose that into the next few albums. Not saying the next albums are bad, but they're not.
They don't have that fire, passion.
Yeah, and I mean that's not saying anything because you can tell because most people are gonna know songs off of the debut album.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think there's very few bands, and that can pull off just being a one-person operation that cycles people through.
Mm-hmm.
Again, our favorite Megadeth is basically that.
Yeah, he writes all the material and everything.
I mean, you look at most major bands that survive the test of time. They have a core. I mean, Metallica's really just swapped out the bassist.
Yep.
Rest in peace, Cliff. Could have been something that they kept him, though, huh?
Yeah, that would have been.
And then, I mean, the Stones, they've released 29 albums. They're the same band they have been since the 60s.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I mean, the Beatles' strong point off them was, the McCartney and Lennon.
Yep.
Although George Harrison, underrated songwriter.
Yeah.
And Ringo was there for the fun. I'm just kidding. But that's what you find. You don't find very many bands that are just one guy and that they survive. Mm-hmm. Those bands normally they're just a smaller career, right? They have that big first album.
Yeah.
And then it's mostly because those guys tend to be harder to work with. And I kind of saw that a lot going through the history of this band. Was for some of the reasons people dropped out, it was creative differences or differences of opinions, or they didn't gel well over time. The longer they're in the band, the less chance they had to stay.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of what hurt Wolfmother. I would have liked to see a second album with this lineup.
Yeah.
But anyways, on to that. We get to 2009's.
Yeah, their next album here called Cosmic Egg. What did you think of this album?
I gave this album a B.
Okay.
I had 10,000 Feet and Cosmic Egg as my 2 highlights. I put down, it's kind of lacked the energy
Yeah.
of the first album, which is weird because as I was reading up on the band, I was reading Stockdale was talking about he wanted this to be a more relentless and in-your-face album than the first album.
And you just
I
didn't feel that.
didn't feel that, man.
Yeah.
This album though, definitely, this album was heavier, like on the riff wise.
Yes.
Everything it felt more down tuned to me. Reminded me a lot of like the heavier Sabbath
Yeah,
riff.
yeah.
Like this one he was taking. First one was more like like a Led Zeppelin type of album. This one felt like more like he was trying to channel that inner Sabbath.
Yeah.
I thought the mixing on this one was a little bit better. Still muddied at times, but still better.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it just sounds like they just recorded everything and upped the volume to 10. That's the only thing I have that's complained. And then I thought the solo on the castle was just killer. Wasn't overly technical, and I think that's what the strong part of this band is, right?
Yeah.
They're not an overly technical,
but they can create, good riffs, stuff that sounds nice,
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be super technical or complex to be
Right.
good,
'Cause I think you were touching on this. We kind of joked about this before. Like they were the number 2 Led Zeppelin, like
a cover band or something,
yeah.
Or sound alike, yeah.
Alike. And so they're not really out here reinventing things, but
Yeah.
that's okay. Sometimes it's just good to hear people
Get
play
a different
good hard rock with their influences.
Get a different take on something that's already been
Right.
done.
I mean, let's be honest. If we could keep getting prime Zeppelin albums or something, nobody would complain.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you think?
I gave this album a C.
C?
And I kind of agree. I do agree with kind of what you were saying, how this album feels kind of uninspired. It just, in my opinion, it felt like it was just a continuation of the first album, but it didn't have a lot of that, spark to it. It was just like, hey, we're, pretty successful right now. We got to come up with something good. What worked last time, let's just do it again here. Maybe we'll change very, very little about what we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And in my opinion, they didn't change enough, and it just kind of was. I also thought it was too long. Some of the songs, after listening to it, just kind of blended together. And I personally, it was an okay album. It definitely wasn't my favorite of them.
Yeah, you're right. This is a runtime of
53
minutes. How many tracks are we looking at here? Because I was reading too. He was talking about how many tracks?
12.
Wow. Because I was reading, he was talking about wanting to do 17 tracks for this album.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's too many.
Yeah.
And he was talking about like, this album's starting to get into double album category,
Mm-hmm.
which is a weird thing to do right off your second album.
Yeah.
You haven't really had that foothold yet. Are you really sure you want 17 albums?
Yeah.
I don't know. I agree that this album was kind of long.
Yeah. And I kind of like that it took, kind of the heavier side on the riffing and things like that. My favorite songs on this album were Sundial and In the Morning. I liked In the Morning, it was just slow and melodic. And I also liked the songs where he didn't really wail and didn't, do the high pitches so much.
Yeah, those songs were hard for me. If you listen to our first episode, Annihilate, I harp on that a lot. Just the vocals are a big deal for me.
Yeah.
And you're right. When he was just overly wailing,
it's just kind of
yeah.
The dude can sing. He can get up there.
Oh, yeah, he can definitely get up there.
Definitely talented.
He's like that dude on the dance floor who just keeps doing the dice move. He just relies on his one good thing too much, man, he really is doing the dice too much.
Right.
It's like, just slow it down and just sing. Because you can. He can sing. You're right.
Yep.
I don't know. It's a weird follow-up, right? And I think for a lot of bands that come out strong with a first debut album,
yeah,
you need a strong follow-up.
Yeah.
Because you can go the other way, right? Like you can start off with some okay albums and then ramp up to that first big album.
Mm-hmm.
And I think these two bands we've done so far on the only 2 episodes have done that. They've started off with these big albums.
Yeah.
Alice in Hell for Annihilator and Wolfmother for Wolfmother.
Yeah.
But their follow-ups each
They're
time.
just kind of like, eh.
Yeah.
There you know. Riding off of the high of the first one.
Right.
So feeling like they have to come up with something, but they just can't reach that first spark, you know.
Yeah. And
can't get it again.
Two, it's the same problem, right? Do you think it's because they switched out lineups? Do you think if they had consistent lineups?
Maybe.
Because the only band we know to talk about is Megadeth, apparently. I mean, Killing Is My Business. It's a good album. I mean, I like it, obviously. Yeah. Don't get me wrong.
It has some solid songs on it.
Commercial, it wasn't the biggest.
No.
And a lot of early Megadeth success came from it's Dave Mustaine, previously of Metallica.
Yep. You're riding on the Metallica fame.
But, oh my God.
Their second album was masterpiece.
Yeah. And which is, again, rare for Megadeth to keep the same lineup. They kept the same lineup and they worked on it. And, you're right. It is a masterpiece.
Yeah.
So, again, touching on what I was saying about the first album.
Maybe
if they would have kept,
the same lineup, then maybe it would have been a better album. Who knows?
Yeah. I don't know. I'd like to see band. It's going to be interesting when we get to a band that has kept the same lineup for a while. Mm-hmm. So you get that era of
see how it's gone for a while.
Yeah, and then Wolfmother 2 had something that I wanted to touch on with Annihilator, but I kind of forgot last week. Whereas the band it doesn't have another big single, right? Like Woman and Joke and the Thief are big singles, right?
Were there two huge singles,
right.
Yeah.
And same with Annihilator, Alice in Hell, for most part, unless you listen to Annihilator, is the only song you're going to know.
Yep.
But when you start listening to the albums back to back, there's no like, ooh, this is the album with so-and-so on it, right?
This song on it, the standout, yeah.
Right. And you get that a lot with this. So when you're starting to listen to the albums in a row, you're like, there's nothing to look forward to in a way, right? It's kind of weird. And then you start like thinking, well, this song isn't great. Because you don't have that one song to judge the album to, right?
Yep.
Yeah, you're right. If you start with, I don't want to use Megadeth as an example. I mean, if you use, we'll just say, Metallica's a hard example too. Okay, so, damn, that is hard. I can't think of a band, but you have that album, and then you have a few albums in the middle where they're not as strong.
Yeah.
And then but then that next album has that big single that you know from this band. You can judge those other albums based off that. Like, how did they get back to that?
Mm-hmm. Actually, I think AC/DC kind of was like that.
Yeah.
Before their Back in Black album.
That's yeah.
They had a lot of good songs on their previous albums, but then when Back in Black came out, they exploded. Almost that whole album.
It's a great thing too, right? Like, because the ones before that are the Bon Scott era.
Yeah. And
then after that's Brian Johnson when they come in. So yeah, you can compare those earlier albums, which are great, and they're still great AC/DC albums. But with Brian Johnson, they just take that to the whole next level.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, you're right. You can go to the next albums and go, well, I was okay. And then, boom, big single. And you're like, oh, they got back to this. This is what made it good.
Yeah.
But you don't get that with bands like this that keep switching out. There's no looking forward single. And I'm kind of excited to get to bands like that.
Yeah.
And we'll see where we get to next week. But I don't know. That's just kind of my thought about, like, band. Wolfmother and Annihilator, they don't play the same music. But, like, band trajectory, it's kind of the same, right?
Yeah.
Like, you could see them being the same situation band.
Yeah.
So I just kind of wanted to bring that back up this time. I mean, we're pretty good on that one, right? Cosmic Egg, we got through pretty much where we wanted to.
Yeah. It was
that
an
brings
okay
us,
album.
Yeah, it was a good album. I mean, I put it as a B. Brings us to 2014's New Crown. What did you think about this one?
New Crown for me, I was kind of torn on this one. I was flipping between a C and a D. And I eventually chose C. I think this album had some really strong songwriting. I think it had some really good material on it. I think it had some, good songs. The thing that held it back for me was just the production.
Oh,
it was terrible.
It's so bad. I have that in my notes.
It
too.
was terrible, and I think this album is the one that they did not release through their record label. Stockdale, he had recorded it and done everything on Bandcamp, and then released it through there. And it had no final mixing from the record label at all. So it sounds, in my opinion, like very muddy. Mm-hmm. And I just did not like the sound over here. The vocals were very inconsistent. The drumming, sometimes you could barely even hear it, and it just blended in with background noise, in my opinion. So,
yeah, because I was reading too, talking about that. Like, this was just recorded by Stockdale, what sounds like in the garage.
Yeah.
Because the album that was supposed to be third for Wolfmother, he released on his own, his own solo project.
Yes.
And then recorded this.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't go back and listen to that album.
I didn't either. I heard that it was commercially a flop.
Yeah.
And that was one of the reasons why he brought back Wolfmother. Because I believe during the tour for that album, they had stopped halfway through because of the poor reception of that album. And then he got Wolfmother back together to play the rest of that tour with Wolfmother songs in it.
It's kind of funny though, right? Like, nothing changes. It's like still Stockdale.
Yep.
But it's funny that like a brand name can carry, Like, nobody wants to see Andrew Stockdale. Oh, it's Wolfmother?
Yeah.
Playing basically the same set list with a few Wolfmother songs? Sign me up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that album was actually called Keep Moving.
Okay.
For anybody interested, but yeah. What did you think of this album?
I had this album as a C.
Okay.
Yeah. I wasn't on the same like balancing act between you putting on a D, because like I think if it had a better production,
it would have been a lot better.
A lot better.
Yeah, I agree.
But the thing that really held this down, but not counting the production, was his vocals. Oh my God, did he just like rely on the wailing? We were talking about that for Cosmic Gig, but this one is just every song is the same vocals.
Yeah. I completely agree. It got annoying at times, and with the bad production, like, it started to hurt my ears, when I was listening to it. I'm just like, okay, man, tone it down a little bit,
Like, I do really think this album had some great songwriting on it. Like, when it was good, it could have been really good with just, if you would have just taken the time to, like, sit down and work with somebody on it or not. My only highlight from here is I Ain't Got No.
That was my highlight.
Yeah.
Here. It's just came out of nowhere as, a little fun song, but that was really the only one that I kind of liked on this album.
Yeah, man. Like we were talking about earlier, keeping the lineup and all that together. This is one I'd like to see them go back and remaster this almost. I'd be interested to check it out with better production values.
Yep.
Just because I think there's some possibly good Diamond in the Rough songs on here.
Mm-hmm.
But they're just hidden behind poor quality.
Yeah. I really liked, or I did like How Many Times, like the opening track. I thought that was a good song, but just, with these songs, I can't put them on my playlist because I just think they just sound terrible, in my opinion. But
again, if Stockdale listens to this, please remaster this album.
Yeah.
Like, I think this could be a great album.
Yeah. I completely
also,
agree.
Stop wailing so much on your damn songs. That brings us to 2016's Victorious. I had this as a B.
Okay.
And we were kind of talking at work that I was kind of struggling. You had came up and I was like struggling to like rank an album.
Yeah.
I didn't tell you which album. This would be that album. This would be like a B minus C plus to me, really.
Okay.
There's just I have it in my notes that I had a hard time ranking this. It's had good moments, and when the album was good, it was good. Like, but there wasn't enough of them to push any higher.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm being kind of generous with a B for this one.
Okay.
But I did really like the high moments.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the album for what it was. Wasn't really reinventing
Yeah,
anything
so it's,
Wolfmother did. Wasn't reinventing any of the classic rock sounds they want to do.
yeah, it didn't stand out.
No. My highlights, Pretty Peggy. Thought that was a pretty solid song.
Yeah, that was one of my standouts. I like that song.
Victorious too. I actually liked the chorus in Victorious.
You did?
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty solid song into the chorus and into the rest.
Yeah, I actually put that I didn't like the chorus on that song. And in my opinion, that song I feel like it had way too many of that drum fill.
Yeah.
It's just
That's
like the
fair.
same I can't exactly remember what it was, but I was like, God, it's like the 8th time that he's already done this exact same one. Like, how many more times is he gonna do it?
I didn't have Victorious my first listen through as a highlight,
Mm-hmm.
but when I came back to the album a second time, I put it back up there.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was okay.
Yeah. I gave this. I was right there with you with the C plus B minus. I ended up giving it a B, more on the B minus side. I thought the production was a lot better.
Oh yeah.
You know, it was definitely sounded a lot better. But you know, it was just kind of okay. I really didn't like the first 3 songs. You know, The Love That You Give, Victorious, and Baroness. I was just kind of like, whatever.
Yeah. Baroness was an interesting song.
Yeah.
That was one I don't know. I almost put it as a highlight, I think.
It was
Okay. It was one of those songs that it came on and I was grooving to it. Wouldn't add it to a playlist, but it was like, it was pretty good.
Yeah, I liked the guitars in it, but I really didn't like anything else on that song. But I felt after that, starting with Pretty Peggy all the way down, I liked almost every song after that. Not really enough to put on like a, you know, hard rock playlist or anything.
Right.
But, you know, I thought if it wasn't for the second half of the album, then I probably would have given it like a C. So.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have much else to say about that album.
Yeah, I just thought it was okay.
Yeah, it was a good album. That's kind of what I felt about a lot of rock Wolfmother songs. Like they were just good rock songs for the most part. If the production quality wasn't
Bad.
And to me, though, there's a lot of this would be a good band if you're just doing some work and you put on in the background.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of the first song, there's not that many, or outside of the first album, there's not that many I'd add to a playlist where I was like, man, I want to jam out to.
Yeah, there's nothing
Wolfmother
that really stands out as like an essential, you know.
And that brings us to 2019, their newest and latest release, Rock and Roll Baby.
Rock and Roll Baby.
It's not really an album though. It's only 23 minutes.
Yeah, it's
Which again, I appreciated that the last 3 albums are shorter.
Yes.
Good 35, 40-minute album.
Yeah.
I enjoy that.
And I gave this album a B to B plus. I kind of enjoyed it, and one of the highlights was because it was so short.
Yeah, that's fair.
And it's not that I don't like, you know, long albums, or I'm saying that these guys make bad albums when they're long. I mean, it's just I think that with this runtime, it was like 23, 24 minutes, they were able to put more effort into their songs, I felt, at least in my opinion. So they were able to create higher quality ones. And one of the big things with Wolfmother is the vocals. You know, when he hits those high notes, I'm like, okay, it's kind of cool for the first album, and then after that, I felt it started getting annoying with the later albums. So, I think he did that less on this album, and I really like that change. I really like the songs where he didn't do the high wailing. So
yeah, I don't know. I guess this is like a C plus to me.
Okay.
You're right. I did enjoy that it was shorter, but I kind of felt the other way on it. That, you know, you felt they could put a lot of work and time into it. I went the other way. Like, it was short. Just it felt kind of rushed.
Just to put something out there.
Like they were kind of all over the place.
Okay.
I didn't really have any standout album or songs off this album. It just wasn't. It didn't do it for me.
Okay.
They were better quality and higher produced. I did see that they recorded this in Dave Grohl's studio, which I thought was kind of cool.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But just didn't do it for me. It wasn't bad enough. Like I put him as a D. Like no highlights like that. It just none of the songs really did it for me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this was the album I had a hard time like writing anything for.
Because it just okay.
Yeah, it was short. Wasn't a whole lot to the songs, and it just didn't do anything for me personally.
Okay.
But
yeah, it's kind of crazy how we both are like completely opposite on that.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, I liked a lot of these songs where, you know, I think they had good guitars on a lot of these songs. Some of the slower melodies, obviously when he didn't sing the really high notes. So, but yeah, I thought it was a strong album.
Yeah. I mean, this is definitely a band I'll check. If they release another album, I'll check it out. I don't know if I'm going to check out Annihilator's 18th album, but I'll check out Wolfmother's 6th album.
Yeah, I think I feel the other way. I would check out Annihilator's new album. Wolfmother, I mean, overall, it's not really a band that I would really listen to outside of their first album.
Yeah, overall.
Some of the big hits,
Overall, if you had to give them a grade. Like an average grade of all the albums.
I'd go with like a C. C plus to B minus, yeah.
Just because a lot of the songs didn't do it for you, vocals.
Yeah, mostly. I thought the first album was their best one.
Okay.
And outside of that, there weren't really a lot of memorable songs, in my opinion. And a lot of it did have to do with the vocals, and for me, I felt like he used that high wailing as a crutch. Be like, hey, look what I can do. And it just kind of started to annoy me. That's just me. Some people might like that.
Hey.
It just personally.
Hey, we can be 100% here, Keep it 100.
Yeah.
This is just, it's an opinion.
Yeah. So what would you rate Wolfmother as?
I'd put him as a B, and that's just mostly off the strength of the first album and how much I enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I would check out their new release, but I wouldn't be in a hurry. I think overall, if you were to take the first album out and we just had to rank them on the next overall as a band, it'd be a C, kind of like you. You're right. He did rely too much on the wailing. The production value was just...
It was all over the place.
All over the place.
For a lot of these albums.
I kind of read where they were talking about some of the songwritings, like the lyrics, like, well, what songs mean. And like the title track to Victorious, where it's like, oh, it's about everyday small victories. When I feel like good songwriters can make songs like that resonate with anybody who listens to it, right? But I feel like a lot of Wolfmother songs don't do that. I'm sure they resonate good with Stockdale.
Uh-huh. Or some people.
Some people, but the way he writes songs, they just don't resonate with everybody. And this is going to be a real unfair comparison. It's like, this is going to be real unfair. Something by the Beatles, which is considered probably one of theirs and maybe the greatest songs ever written, is about George Harrison's wife or girlfriend at the time and how. But everybody can relate to that song, right?
Yeah.
Again, this is a hot take comparison, but a song like Victorious, which is great, and it's just a pop hard rock song, about the small victories in life. Everybody has those, but I can't relate to that as much as, a song like that. Again, real hot take.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I understand that that's not comparing two great comparisons, but it was the first one that came to my head.
Yeah,
right?
and I understand what you're saying. You know, something that can make you feel more on like an emotional level you can relate to. Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, it's just like when I was reading up on the band, he's talking about all these songs that he wrote, like they're deep and meaningful, and I'm sure they are to him, or like they're touched on this. It's just one of them, I don't remember the name of the song, but he was talking about, I think it's off Victorious, like it's a song about living in a beach town in Australia. How many people are going to be able to relate to that? It's like, like sure, the song might be deep and meaningful to you, and this is just a criticism on like songwriting and lyricism from me, who's never written a song off an album in my life. But still, I don't know. It's just I felt like a lot of the songs and lyrics, like on songs that are supposed to be deep or meaningful,
Were
didn't
important.
hit home.
Yeah,
as
they
much.
were important to him.
And that, to me, that lowers the grade in a lot of the songs. Whereas if they were just nonsensical lyric hard rock songs,
Mm-hmm. Partying and
right? Let's be honest.
random.
85% of good hard rock songs are about girls, like, right?
Yeah,
in some
that's
form
true.
or fashion.
Yeah.
Like, they don't make any sense.
Yeah, and I mean sometimes they do, and sometimes you can relate to that stuff.
But they're related. Those are still going to be more relatable, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's fair. But I also think like songs that you can relate to, like just in general, are going to blow up bigger.
Yeah.
Than songs written for
A specific, either for
Yeah.
yourself or like a specific audience.
And
yeah.
now that's not true for every song, right? Like, I can't remember the name of the song. Save My Life. Clapton, like Tears in Heaven or something about his son dying. It's a real popular song, but it doesn't play anymore.
Okay.
But that's a more personal song to him, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's still like a super popular song.
Yeah.
Like you can do those. It's just where the songwriting comes in, like the whole song together.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, again, I'm making real unfair comparisons to Wolfmother. I'm talking about the Beatles, and I'm comparing them to Clapton, who's like a 3-time Rock and Roll Hall of Fame member. But unfortunately, those are just the examples that are coming.
Yeah. The quickest examples.
Yeah,
that come
and
to
ones
your
that
mind.
people would understand. But no, I don't know. I thought it was an okay band.
Yeah.
Glad I went through it. I'm glad I was able to listen to more of their debut album. But yeah, for the most part, band didn't do it for me, and I think a lot of it was just off the vocals.
Yeah, the band definitely outside of their first album, I was just kind of like,
Yeah,
they're okay, I guess.
I don't know. Well, I mean, that kind of wraps it up for our
This week.
Wolfmother review. What are we doing next week? It's your turn to pick. This was for those that don't know, we switch bands back and forth. The first week was Aurelio's. This week was mine. What's your pick for the third week?
I kind of mentioned to Andy earlier that I was torn between two bands. And I think I'm going to choose Fastball.
Fastball. Ooh, bring it back to the 90s. Yeah.
90s hard rock band.
Kind of pop rock. Yeah,
Pop rock,
yeah.
yep. So I look forward to, I know a couple of their songs.
Yeah, me too, for sure. We're going to cover as many genres as possible.
Yeah.
We're not big rap fans, so we're not sure how we're going to get to that.
Yeah, I feel like rap would be a touchy one because there's so much that goes into some of those albums, like if they had beef with this person or some sort of thing happened to them or whatever. And, I don't know about reading the history about every album that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of our things are going to stick towards the metal and rock, but I'd like to get into some country artists too. I grew up listening to country. There are some artists we're kind of like not getting into right away that I think we could do.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really kind of want to get into Metallica and Megadeth yet.
Those would be some pretty good discussions.
Yeah, but we're kind of like looking
to something new.
Yeah, expand our horizon on this too. We'll do definitely bands we know: Daft Punk, Megadeth, Metallica, bands like
Iron
Maiden. Yeah. But we'll say those for later. Now we're looking for just bands, but yeah. Check in next week for the mighty Fastball, which I don't think anybody has used to describe Fastball. And if you don't know Fastball is, and you don't check them out for next, you should. You'll definitely know one or two songs. They were pretty big in the 90s.
They were pretty huge in the 90s.
I'm pretty interested, to see what the rest of their albums sound like. So, check back next week. We're aiming right now to upload on Fridays. That might change, but check back Friday. Yeah. Or Saturday if this thing gets accepted by Spotify. So, coming up next week. Fastball.
Yeah.